This episode is sponsored by Archaeologist Tours. Want to dig deeper into Mexico's indigenous past and present? Allow Archaeologist Tours to customize your Yucatan adventure. Archaeologist works hand in hand with local indigenous guides to provide a tour that is entertaining, educational, and beneficial to the local community. For an adventure like no other, check out archaeogato.com. That's ARKEOGATO.com. Or just follow the link in the show notes. Now, on with the show.
You must excuse me. I've grown quite weary.
This hasn't been easy, I know. But you've learned a lesson. A lesson in honesty. Honesty to yourself and honesty to others. That lesson will stand you in good stead all your life.
I think we've all learned a good lesson. I've always heard that honesty is the best policy. Now I'm catching on to why that's so,
Greetings, dear listeners, and welcome to yet another episode of Tales from Aztlantes, the podcast where we explore Chicano, Mexicano, and Mesoamerican history and archaeology and combat disinformation about the same. We are your hosts, Kurly Tlapoyawa.
And Ruben Arellano Tlacatecat.
What is up, man? How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. How about yourself?
I'm also doing well. Thank you for asking. It's been hot, and I've been working out in the field up in Santa Fe, so it's been a little warm recently, but things are getting better.
How are the wildfires doing?
They're all under control as far as I know right now. So things are, they're just dealing with the aftermath of a lot of wildfires and then all the flooding that comes with the freaking monsoon season happening immediately after all of these wildfires take place. So it causes a lot of damage, man. It's been doing a lot of damage, especially down near the Sacramento Mountains. So it's been rough for some people.
I bet. Well, at least it's good to hear that they're under control and that things are beginning to subside a little bit. So that's good.
Yes. And so we are currently in the month of September, and we all know what that means. It's almost Cinco de Mayo.
Cinco de Mayo, dude. That's Mexican Independence Day, right?
Mexican Independence Day is coming up September 16th. And it made me think a little bit, and it's tied into today's episode, actually. It's nice how that works out sometimes. But a lot of people, Chicanos in particular, are unaware that after 1821, after the War for Independence from Spain, the Mexican Republic didn't actually become a republic until 1824. So you had this period of time between 1821 and 1824 that was pretty tumultuous. And within that frame of time was the first Mexican Empire, which not many people talk about.
Yeah, that is something that's kind of unfortunate. But I'm, as an instructor, as a historian, I try to remedy that with my students at least. When we talk about that period of American history and even, Mexican American history and American history, we always bring up the battle for Mexican independence from Spain, because I try to explain to students that the aftermath of that war for independence from Spain snowballs because of all the tumult, as you were just saying, into what later becomes the fight for Texas independence, which leads directly to the War of 1846 and 1848 between the U.S. and Mexico, which ended up giving most of the northern part of Mexico, Spain claimed first, and then Mexico claimed as its territory, almost half of it, which now becomes the Southwest, right? And so these histories are intertwined. For the longest time, historians who tended to be nationalistic to a degree tended to talk about their history of their country separately. But now, those of us that know better, hopefully more people are catching on to this, talk about the history on a more hemispheric sense, on a more broader worldwide sense, and try to make those connections and how we're all basically entangled, despite what Washington said at the beginning of this country's founding. He said, avoid entanglements, but we can't help it. We're humans. I mean,
it's within our nature.
And we're going to get entangled in stuff. Just like Iturbide, it gets entangled in the first Mexican Empire.
Yeah. And for those not in the know, allow me to, get you in on the know. I pulled up this article. It's on Wikipedia, so whatever. But I read it, and it's accurate.
Well,
so
Wikipedia
it's not
is good as an encyclopedia. That's what I tell my students.
Yeah,
if you're using it for a reference, it's fine for the most part. But if you're using it as a source to cite in your work, no, I don't think so.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good way of looking at it. So from the Wikipedia page on the first Mexican Empire. It says, although Mexico became a republic in 1824, it did so only after the failure of the empire under former military officer Agustin de Iturbide, who ruled as Agustin I.
Agustin
I. He obviously thought there were going to be more,
right?
But it didn't work out.
Well, you got to have a first. There's always a first.
Yeah. The sole monarch of this first empire. Monarchy was the default position for independent Mexico, called for in the political Plan de Iguala, drafted by Iturbide, which united forces fighting for independence from Spain. The last Spanish viceroy signed the Treaty of Cordova in September 1821, and the plan for monarchy in independent Mexico moved forward. Damn. Iturbide's popularity culminated in mass demonstrations on May 18, 1822, in favor of making him emperor of the new nation, in the absence of any European royal agreeing to assume the throne. It's kind of fucked up that after they get independence, they turn to Europe and they're like, hey, does anybody want to be emperor of Mexico?
But the part that gets me is like, how do we go from monarchy to empire in one fell swoop? How does that happen?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. We should investigate that.
I'm sure someone's written on it. I just haven't gotten to that book yet. It's probably on one of my lists to read.
So, Agustin de Iturbide, the first emperor of the first Mexican Empire. Later, he was driven out. And then he returns to Mexico at one point where he's taken captive and executed.
They told him not to come back, but he's like, hey,
they told him.
The Mexican people love me. They want their emperor back because
yeah, they want me back.
Unlike those other guys, I'm actually wearing nice clothes.
And it's called the First Mexican Empire to distinguish it from the Second Mexican Empire of Maximilian.
Right, which is the second Mexican independence.
Yeah, so there's a lot.
So we have emperors on both major independence movements in Mexico's history. The first one and the second one. And guess what? They both get shot. Maximilian also gets executed. Way to go, Mexico.
And I bring this up because it was Agustin de Iturbide and the First Mexican Empire that really had that flag, that flag design that we now recognize is like the flag of the Mexican nation, right? With the green, white, and red, the eagle and everything in the middle. Because before that, it was the flag of the three guarantees.
Las tres garantías, right?
Yeah, which had the green, white, and red, but it was like diagonal.
Like the way that the presidents wear it across their chest today with that banner.
Yes.
Or what would you call it? Not a banner. What would you call that? Like there's a name for that. I can't think of it.
Yeah, like a sash.
Sash. There you go. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sash.
And so you had the flag of the three guarantees, and then that carried over, the colors anyway, carried over to the flag, the official flag of the First Mexican Empire. And that iconography sort of continued throughout Mexico's history.
Doesn't it evolve? And, I mean, it's not exactly the same as it was.
It's not exactly the same.
But the iconography and the the figures are basically the same, right?
Yeah, the three main things are the eagle and the cactus on a rock, right? And I think the first flag, the eagle under the Mexican Empire, the eagle was wearing a crown,
right?
And there was no serpent.
No serpent.
No serpent. And there was even a little. There was water, so the rock was standing like an island with water.
Tenochtitlan, right, representing the seat of power, Mexico City.
Exactly. So I mention all of this because that has to do with today's episode, which is about the Mexika Pantli, or the alleged Mexika Pantli, or Panketzalli. Right? I've heard it called all these different things. I was just going to say,
am I misremembering, or did we used to call it the Panketzalistli or something to that effect?
Yeah, well, the Panketzalli, and then it's also been called La Bandera de Victoria. It's been called...
Really? La Bandera de Victoria?
Yeah, La Bandera de Cuitlahuac.
Yeah, Cuitlahuac,
I've heard it called.
Right.
And if you're active in Mexicayot or danza communities, you've undoubtedly seen this image.
You know what we're talking about. You probably have it tattooed, or it's on one of your T-shirts or something.
Yeah, I've got one right here in the house. A little screen printed one.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're everywhere. So it's quite a ubiquitous symbol, and you commonly hear danzantes refer to it, especially those involved in Mexicayo, as like the real Mexican flag.
Right? Not that imposter flag.
Yeah, not that bullshit invented by Agustin I. And keep in mind that name, Agustin de Iturbide, because that also plays in to today's episode. So with that, dear listeners...
That's interesting that there's that connection between the first Mexican ruler after independence, Iturbide, and the association he had with the flag that we now know as the Mexican flag, and the Iturbide individual that we're about to talk about today. That's good going there, sir. I like that.
Exactly. An Aztec false flag. Back in the day when I was a young man living in Mexico City, I purchased a paperback book on the Zócalo that would have a huge influence on me. The book was called Juicio a España, and it was written by Antonio Xoconochtlet Gomora. And while I now know that its contents are largely a hodgepodge of pseudo-historical nationalist rhetoric, its anti-establishment and pro-indigenous stance strongly resonated with me at the time. And in many ways, it helped lead me down the path of legitimate archaeology and ethnohistory. I must have read and reread this book like a dozen times. It fed into my own sense of indigenous pride with its decidedly anti-Spanish narrative. But it was the image I found on page 135 that stuck out to me the most. The top of the page reads,
Explicación de la verdadera bandera mexicana, dicha por el excelente historiador mexicanista Dr. Ignacio Romero Vargas Iturbide.
Or, in English,
Explanation of the true Mexican flag, told by the excellent Mexican historian Dr. Ignacio Romero Vargas Iturbide.
You should put that on your business card, by the way. Excellent Mexican historian.
Excellent Chicano historian.
There you go. And emblazoned underneath the image of what many call the... God damn it. So sorry, I wrote that wrong. And emblazoned underneath is the image of what many refer to as the true Mexica banner, or the banner of Cuitlahuac, or simply the Panketzalli, or precious banner. Now, for those not familiar with this particular image, I will include a link to the banner in the show notes for this episode. You should pull it up because I'm going to be referring to it a lot during this episode. As for the alleged story behind its discovery, it goes something like this. At some unknown point in time, and believe me, I've tried to nail down the goddamn year this was supposed to have happened, but there's no information available. At some unknown point in time, a Mexicanista named Ignacio Romero Vargas Iturbide, yeah, there's that last name again,
Yep.
who was working as the personal secretary to the Pope, made a startling discovery while working in the private collections of the Vatican. While combing through the massive archives, Iturbide came upon a Mexika war banner emblazoned with an image familiar to every Mexican, an eagle standing triumphant atop a nopal cactus, the sun blazing behind it. But instead of holding a serpent in its beak, this eagle held the Atlachinoli, the Mexika symbol for fire and water that was associated with sacred warfare. This banner, Iturbide surmised, stood as the authentic and true flag of the Mexica people, and by extension, the modern Mexican nation. Lacking a camera, Iturbide is said to have drawn the banner from memory and later had it reproduced. This symbol has since become inextricably linked with the Mexicayot movement, and it can be found on t-shirts, paliacates, stickers, murals, and even, as my co-host mentioned earlier, tattoos.
Isn't it funny how whenever you need a camera to be around for something important, there's never a camera. Like with the UFOs that people claim to see. Mm-hmm. Like there's never an actual good camera that can take a solid picture of this flying UFO. And in this case, Mr. Iturbide just happens to be in some archive, and he doesn't. Well, I guess maybe back then they weren't thinking about this sort of stuff like we do today in terms of taking pictures.
Yeah.
So we can forgive him for that. We can forgive him for that one.
Well, the claim that he drew it from memory and had it later reproduced is like, it doesn't even come from him.
So he never said that himself.
No, and we'll hear more about that later in the episode.
Got it.
So before we delve into the origins of the alleged banner itself, I wanted to talk a little bit about Romero Vargas Iturbide. Unfortunately, however, there exists almost no information about his personal history, and most of the claims made about him come from second-hand sources from within the Mexicayot movement. In the book Hijos del Sexto Sol, or Children of the Sixth Sun, which, if you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. It's only available in Spanish, and I don't know how widely available it is, but if you could find it, I recommend buying it. Its author, Francisco de la Peña, notes about Iturbide.
We'll be back after a quick break.
This episode of Tales from Aztlantes is brought to you by Aztlantes Premium. Don't you just hate having your favorite podcast interrupted by ads like this? Well, dear listener, you're in luck. Because starting at just $3 a month, you can support independent Chicano media and receive ad-free episodes, premium episodes, bonus content, and access to our Discord server. Just visit talesfromaztlantes.com and click Go Premium, or follow the link in the show notes. And now, on with the show.
We do not have many details about his life, but according to information provided to me by some of his acquaintances, we know that he belonged to a rich family, that Romero Vargas's father was governor of the state of Puebla in the Porfirian era, and that on his mother's side he considered himself a descendant of Emperor Iturbide. It is stated that he had 5 doctorates. 5 doctorates. Wow.
5.
2 from the University of, how do you say that, Leuven?
I have no idea. Leuven
in law and theology, 2 from the Pontifical University in Rome, and 1 in Mexico from the UNAM. In his books, Romero Vargas appears as a doctor in law, philosophy, social sciences, theology, and history. Professor of history at the Faculty of Higher Studies of the Michoacana University of San Nicolás de Hidalgo, member of the Mexican Society of Geography and Statistics, director of the Anahuac Culture Research Institute, and president of the Anahuac Law Academy. These last two organizations were founded by none other than Rodolfo Nieva Lopez of the MCRCA fame. However, despite his degrees, Romero Vargas was marginal in the academic environment, and perhaps due to his ideas, his attempts to enter the Institute of Historical Research of the UNAM were unsuccessful. Man, that's too bad. Indeed, Romero Vargas is the most important representative of Mexicayot in the field of historical research. His works are a rewriting of ancient history from an anti-Spanish and anti-European perspective in general, and aim to reveal the quote-unquote authentic history of the indigenous world beyond what he considers the lies and slander invented by the conquerors, the friars, and the chroniclers of the colonial era. So he's probably the guy that's responsible for a lot of the anti-Spanish sentiment, that streak that runs through a lot of Mexicayot. Him and Nieva Lopez, probably, right?
Yeah, I'm sure. And I mean, I'm just throwing this out there, but how likely is it that if you had these kind of credentials, that you could not, get into the
UNAM of all places?
Yeah. Like you can't get into this organization, this historical organization, the Institute of Historical Research of the UNAM, with all these credentials. I mean,
yeah,
something smells fishy, my friend. Yeah. The stories, obviously, about Romero Vargas certainly strain credulity. De la Peña goes on to note that,
according to a story spread among Mexicanistas, Romero Vargas's ideas on the Calpulli inspired Mao Zedong to organize China's agrarian reform based on peasant communes. It is said that Chu Enlai wrote a letter to Romero Vargas requesting his permission to translate his thesis on the political organization of the peoples of Anahuac into Chinese, and that he spent 8 months in that country in 1959 at the invitation of both political leaders, whom he had supposedly met in Paris when he was a student. Another surprising story tells that Romero Vargas was a member of the Vatican Library, where he supposedly had access to pre-Hispanic documents and objects jealously hidden by the Vatican, including the pantli, or flag standard, that belonged to Cuitlahuac and that has become the emblem of Mexicayot. According to those close to him, Romero Vargas's solid theological training made him aspire to a cardinalate in the Vatican, but apparently the crisis of conscience, stemming from his discoveries about Mexico's past, led him to abandon all political religious pretensions and dedicate himself fully to the cause of Mexicayot, unlike his predecessor, Iturbide the Emperor, right?
It should be noted, I can find absolutely no evidence whatsoever to corroborate any of these stories.
No.
And I look, man, believe me, I've spent years trying to track down a lot of these claims, like especially the one about Mao Zedong.
Yeah.
Like I've done deep dives into trying to corroborate that story, and I just cannot
that
find.
Story still makes the rounds. I mean, I still hear it from time to time, and when I'm in certain Calpulli danza events and talking to folks, and when the Pantli comes up and Vargas comes up, is like that story is one that is still circulating. So it's interesting how these things just kind of stick.
Yeah, well, in his book, Los Gobiernos Socialistas de Anahuac, if I remember correctly, there's even a claim that there's a statue of Iturbide.
I believe
in
so,
China,
yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Isn't that one of the claims?
I think so.
De la Peña's short section on Romero Vargas wraps up by detailing the troubles he encountered later in life.
Romero Vargas apparently spent the last years of his life in a precarious situation with serious problems of alcoholism, and it is known that due to problems with his family, he was disinherited. In fact, in his legal defense, he was assisted by none other than his attorney Rodolfo Nieva Lopez from the MCRCA. In any case, a mythical aura surrounds this character who died in 1980, whose singular career is the reason for the most diverse praise among the supporters of Mexika. Man, that's kind of sad to know that about him.
It is. Yeah, that's a drag. And honestly, I mean, apart from what Güemes says about him and what's in this book by De la Peña, there's almost no other information available about him.
Yeah.
Like if you find the official MCRCA website and you click on him, it's only a photo of him. Mm-hmm. Like no biography whatsoever, no information, just a photo. Huh. So that's pretty interesting.
And that picture that circulates of him is kind of interesting, right? Like he's wearing this weird like little cap.
Yeah.
That makes him. And isn't it true that he also liked to dress like he was a pontiff of some sort? Like he had pretensions of being like a priest or some bishop. And that's kind of like the outfit that he used to go out in public. And that's the picture. The most famous picture of him is him dressed in that bishop getup with the funny hat.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Have you picked up your Mexika calendar for the year 12 Flint? Or how about a paperback copy of The Four Disagreements? Just visit talesfromaztlantes.com for all the latest merchandise and show some love for your favorite podcast. That's talesfromaztlantes.com for all the latest merchandise. Now, back to the show. God damn it. So now that we've taken a look at Romero Vargas Iturbide, let's explore the banner itself.
The Banner of Cuitlahuac.
Like the information about Romero Vargas's past, details surrounding the alleged banner are equally scarce. And I should mention, they call it the Banner of Cuitlahuac because allegedly, and I have no idea how he would even know this, this is the war banner that Cuitlahuac had with him or with his troops during the Battle of Otumba when they drove out the Spanish on the Noche Triste or the Night of Victory, the Night of Victory, right? But I've read descriptions of the Battle of Otumba and it doesn't detail anything like that. So I don't know where he got or where anyone got that information from.
I mean, if you have a battle where the people who end up on the losing side were victorious, it's kind of like Cinco de Mayo, right? You know, it's like in the end, I mean, eventually Mexico kicks out the French, but the Cinco de Mayo victory was a singular victory in that struggle of the invasion by France. And in the same way that Otumba battle was one of those singular victories that occurred right before the eventual downfall. And so you have to have something that symbolizes that. And so why not come up with a banner? And
that makes sense.
Say that it was the one that Cuitlahuac took to battle and was victorious. And so take that as the standard for the resistance moving forward.
Good if true.
Hey, make that part of the standard narrative.
Yeah, right? We're adding it right now.
We're adding it right now.
So in regards to the banner itself, Romero Vargas only mentions the banner once in any of his writings. His only mention of the banner comes from Volume 3 of his book, Moctezuma el Magnífico y la Invasión de Anáhuac. And I just so happen to have a copy of it.
The description of this glorious flag. The Shoshone, blue-green or turquoise blue, was a symbol of the absolute sovereignty, of power, of justice, of all the material, physical, and moral elements, the conjunction of the 13 heavens, of the colors of the universe, and of the elements that produce human life, represented by Huitzilopochtli and Tlaloc, lords of the earth. Tlaltecutin, color that could only be used by sovereign rulers and not those subordinated to others. It was the color of the Huaytlatuani, whose kopili was of turquoise and the mantle and flag were of the same color. On the field of Shoshone-colored sovereignty shines Tonatiuh, he who walks shining like fire. like the sun, like divine and fiery maguey, illuminates the universe with his leaves of light, the Lord who gives us life. In the center of the sun, backlit, the august figure of the same, as in Teotihuacan on the staircase of Quetzalcoatl, where we can contemplate the same solar symbol with its leaves of light, in which is the head of an animal that looks like an ocelot from the front and snakes in profile, symbols of the sun and of the sovereign and dual divinity, as in Tenochtitlan, where the sun is represented as a triumphant eagle, as described by the ignorant Father Duran, J. Acosta, and the Ramirez Codex. Quote, "The eagle with its wings extended towards the rays of the sun, taking the heat from it and the freshness of the morning, and in its nails it had a very gallant bird with very precious and resplendent feathers. At the same time, the eagle uttered the solar cry of war and triumph, At Tlachinoli, water and fire," end quote. Quote, "The sun and the ocean, where the former springs up and disappears daily to give life of the inhabitants of Anahuac, the glyphs corresponding to these symbols of water and fire, in later generations, when they were no longer understood, were confused with the snake, which for Nahuatl would have been absurd, since the snake is a symbol of divine wisdom, and the earth could not have as an enemy the solar eagle, who for the Anahuacas was the one who fertilized it. The first to incur in this absurd error, as we have previously explained, was the translator of Alvarado Tesosomoc. Since this is in Nahuatl, the text does not do so, but says, quote, the place where snakes hiss, end quote. Iwan Gowat Isomo Kayan. According to tradition, the eagle with open wings was resting on a cactus that had sprouted in a copil's heart, enemy of the Mexicans, from where the solar eagle reigned over the remains of the defeated. The three rocks symbolize the triple foundation of the Federation of the Valley of Mexico, Tenochtitlan, Texcoco, and Tlacopan, end quote.
And there you have it. That is literally all of the information available about this alleged banner. Hell, even the story I kicked this episode off with comes entirely from second-hand sources. Iturbide never bothered to put the details of his alleged discovery into writing. I own all his books, every single one, and the only mention of the banner at all comes from those 2 pages from Volume 3 of his book, Moctezuma el Magnifico. Any other Mexicayot-related publication that references this image simply repeats, often verbatim, the text from that book. So as you can guess, this raises some interesting questions, such as why should anyone believe Iturbide's story on face value, especially considering his involvement with the MCRCA, the Movimiento Confederado Restaurador de la Cultura Nahuac, a group, as we have mentioned multiple times on this podcast, notorious for pushing pseudo-historical myths meant more to instill nationalist pride than to convey historical fact. Why didn't he document his amazing discovery in an academic journal or a book? I mean, he had 5 doctorates. You would think he knew how to get information out to the public. Of course, he didn't have 5
even
doctorates.
Esparza with the Nepohualtzintzin had, the common sense to at least do 2 books on that one topic.
Right? He was like, I'm going to get my fill from this,
I'm going to milk this.
Yeah. And allegedly, I should also note, I do not believe that he held 5 doctorates, if that's what it sounded like.
I mean, who believes that?
Nobody with a doctorate
5
believes
doctorates.
that.
I mean, I'm a doctor, but I ain't that kind of doctor.
Did he ever even work at the Vatican in any capacity at all, much less as the personal secretary to the Pope? Because
yeah, that's so weird.
Like, what are you...
Like, who is this guy? He's the personal secretary to the Pope?
With 5 doctorates.
With 5 doctorates.
Also, allegedly, he spoke 8 languages, which is not impossible, but...
He's anti-European, he's anti-Spanish, but yet he's allowed to go to the Vatican as
the Pope's boy.
It's a Pope's boy. I mean, that is so weird.
What's up with all these weird claims about Iturbide having 5 doctorate degrees and being a direct descendant of Agustin de Iturbide, the self-appointed emperor of the First Mexican Empire that lasted from 1821 to 1823 following independence from Spain? Like, that just seems, I don't know. There's a lot going on with this dude.
I mean, was his name actually Iturbide? Or was that something that he glommed on just to give himself an air of
mystery,
imperialism, empire,
and mostly
monarchy?
Yeah, why the hell doesn't this alleged banner even closely resemble traditional Mesoamerican artwork? Like, at all. When you look at this alleged banner of Cuitlahuac, it does not look like any representation seen in codices, in murals,
It does seem like an anomaly, doesn't it?
Yes.
Especially if it's supposed to be something that was produced at the time of the revolution between the Spanish allies and the Mexika, that war. Like, you would think that the banner would resemble more the artistic style of that time.
Yes. Obviously, these are far too many questions to tackle in this single episode. But I promise you, dear listener, we will return to this topic at a future date. But for now, I want to focus on the many differences that we were just discussing between the banner and traditional Mexika and Mesoamerican artistic styles. So for this section, I'm going to be drawing from an excellent presentation made by Licenciado Canek Estrada Peña, and drawing from my own personal knowledge of Mesoamerican symbolism and iconography.
The sun.
So the glyph traditionally used to represent the sun in Mexica artwork contains several distinct stylistic attributes. It's made up of numerous concentric circles. The primary rays are cardinally oriented to 4 directions and are almost always triangular in shape. And the glyph sometimes appears along with the sign for movement, or nawi olin, which is always associated with the sun. In comparison, the sun, as it appears on the alleged banner, is interesting to say the least. For starters, it has 11 rays shooting off in all directions without any sort of symmetrical distribution. The rays are not the triangular shape we would expect to see in traditional Mexica artwork, and in fact, they bear an undoubted resemblance to the sculptures at the Temple of Quetzalcoatl in Teotihuacan, which he actually mentions, right? He says, well, what does he call them? He calls them leaves of light, or
leaves of light.
It's interesting that he mentions that, because he was probably like, well, people are going to say that I just ripped it off from it, so I'm going to point it out first.
But also, I'm trying to remember back then, wasn't there this idea that the reason that the sun had 11 rays had to do something with the number of planets, and what was it? Something else?
I'm glad you brought that up, sir.
I think, didn't planet Nibiru, or the planet X, supposedly was one of those that our ancestors knew existed, and somehow it made it onto the banner.
Yeah.
Remember that?
So I'm glad you brought that up, because the story was the 11 rays represented the 9 planets of our solar system, plus the sun, plus the 11th planet that our ancestors knew about.
You know, I don't know who started that, but I can take a guess as to who might have been the author of that line.
Yeah. Does his name rhyme with Moshe Lamolat?
It sounds a lot like Chafa Locoa, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I could see that. I think you're correct. I would venture to guess.
I would venture to guess as well.
That particular myth.
The eagle.
So when eagles are represented in the traditional Mexica style, they are always shown covered with feathers all over their body, with a short neck and small ridges on the neck. When they are presented in polychrome images, the eagle is usually painted brown. And most importantly, the body is almost always shown in profile. In fact, I personally, in all my research, have never found an image of an eagle not presented in profile. There is a drum, the Malinalco drum, I believe, which has a figure on it which might be an eagle. It's hard to distinguish what it's supposed to be, but it is facing forward, kind of. So that's the only discrepancy I've ever seen in that. And I don't even know if it's supposed to be an eagle.
I think you're looking in the wrong place, Kurly. I think you need to be looking at some of the Maya iconography, because isn't there a famous Maya glyph showing, I'm not even sure if it's an actual eagle, but it's some kind of winged bird that is shown facing forward with the wings kind of spread out?
There might be, but I mean, this is supposed to be a Mexika design, you know?
But I'm thinking, I mean, if you're just mixing and matching here, who's going to be the wiser?
I know. But the eagle in the banner of Cuitlahuac, the alleged banner of Cuitlahuac, follows none of those artistic conventions. The eagle is presented facing forward with its wings spread and its head facing to the left. Now, this is an important fact because it really, really looks like the European style, like Habsburg eagles, right? Those imperial eagles from Europe.
It does.
And even more so, if you take the eagle from the alleged, banner of Cuitlahuac and you compare it to the eagle from the flag of the first Mexican Empire, they are posed exactly the same. Like you could get the one and just superimpose it on top of the other. Like
was he paying an homage to his so-called Iturbide ancestor?
Alleged ancestor? Yeah, who knows what the cause for that was, right? It just seems convenient. The plumage is not noticeable except for on the wings, and it only has one crest. The neck is way too long. Like when you look at the banner of Cuitlahuac.
It does look like more like a crane,
yeah,
right?
Its neck is extended far too long. And the wing joints are way too prominent. I mean, it looks nothing like a Mexika-style eagle, is what I'm saying. And perhaps most importantly, the body is completely black. Like it's basically showing the eagle in silhouette. And it makes use of negative space. And the Mesoamericans, no matter where, did not make use of negative space. This is a style never seen in Mexika artwork.
Again, Kurly, this is your lack of imagination showing here. I mean, have you considered that maybe what Romero Vargas Iturbide here was doing was maybe he was inspired by an alebrije type figure, right? It has the neck of a crane, has the wings with the joints of a bat,
and the heart of a lion.
The heart of a lion. And it was painted black.
Yeah, completely black.
The nopal.
In Mexica artwork, the nopal grows vertically from its trunk. The stalks on the sides always emerge from a vertical axis. And emphasis is placed on showing or representing its flowers and prickly pears, which are generally exaggerated in larger proportion to the stalks, and they have very large thorns. So in traditional Mexica artwork, the nopal is almost, it grows upwards, and the nopals come off the side, but they also angle upwards. And the flowers and the prickly pears are huge on these, and they're always prominent. But the nopal is depicted on the banner grow out horizontally across the bottom. They're not distributed from a central axis or trunk, and they do not contain any representations of prickly pears or flowers, which is a little unusual.
Yeah, very unusual. The Atlachinoli.
In the traditional Mexica style, the symbols of water and fire, or Atlachinoli, appear in the form of two differentiated bands. and each one with elements that relate to it. So the fire band has a fire motif, and the water band has snails and chalchihuites inside of it. And despite being united, they're not like one continuous object. It's obviously two objects representing two different things that are just connected at the center. And most importantly, these bands are always depicted. The Atlachinoli is always depicted as emerging from the mouths of various war-related characters. Similar to when you look at the codices and there's that little speech symbol, it's emerging from the mouth, right? It's like it's not being held in the mouth. It's outside of the mouth, coming forward to designate that that person is talking. And the Atlachinoli is always represented in the same way. There's an open mouth, and then the Atlachinoli is like coming out of it.
What do you think that is?
I don't know why that differentiation is made. But they never hold them. They never hold that symbol in the mouth or beaks. But the Atlachinoli glyph in the alleged banner of Cuitlahuac, they are not separate. They're presented as a single linear band with two sides. And the glyph is not emerging from the eagle's beak, but the eagle is holding it in its beak as if it were a physical object. Essentially...
So it's like replacing the snake that currently exists in the Mexican flag that we have today, except now he's like, well, it wasn't a snake, actually.
It was the Atlachinoli.
Atlachinoli.
But I'm going to represent it in the same style that they're showing the snake in.
The snake.
Which isn't how we would have done it at all, how the Mexika
So that's another tell here that this so-called banner of Cuitlahuac, it doesn't date to the pre-Cuauhtemoc era.
Yeah. Essentially, none of the elements depicted in the alleged banner have any similarity whatsoever to traditional artistic styles used by the Mexika people. And this being the case, why bother to fabricate a fictitious banner when there already exists multiple authentic representations of eagles with a nopal and Atlachinoli imagery in extant artifacts, codices, murals, carvings? Like, we have actual images of eagles on cactuses with the Atlachinoli emerging from their mouth. Why didn't they just use that? Like, why?
Simple.
Why invent it?
It's simple, Kurly. It's because why we wouldn't be sitting here talking about Dr. Romero Vargas Iturbide all these years later. I mean, he succeeded in extending his legacy beyond what it would have been because, I mean, as you described early on, his attempts at being successful through the usual academic circles were unsuccessful. And so what better way than to, give the finger to the establishment and say, I'm going to go the opposite route. And guess what? People are going to remember me. They're going to remember my work. They're going to remember this banner that I created, even though I'm saying it's not mine. Wink, wink. If you dig deep enough, you'll find that it's me. But actually, going back to that, didn't we at one point suspect that this person by the name of Estrella Newman, who was an artist, who was also associated with the MCRCA, which at some point we're going to do an episode on her, didn't we suspect that perhaps she was the person who maybe was that Iturbide
tasked with painting it?
Yeah. Like, can you do this for me?
Yeah.
Like, maybe he gave her the idea, like a little sketch, and he said, "Can you make this happen? Make this be a thing."
Yeah. I still suspect we're right, because if you look at Estrella Newman's paintings, especially the ones that she did for those in the MCRCA in that style, right, promoting the Mexicayot, that style that she uses is like freaking identical to the way that the alleged banner of Cuitlahuac looks. Like, it stylistically, they're very, very similar, down to the colors that she uses and just the basic iconography that she uses. So I think we're onto something there. Unfortunately, we'll never know, right? Because they've both passed away long ago. And I don't think anybody who actually knows the truth is too eager to come out and let it be known, unfortunately. But we could be wrong. If we got any listeners out there who want to step forward and with the smoking gun of who painted this banner, please feel free to do so.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
One thing that I found while researching this episode is a petition on change.org. Remember change.org?
That's still around?
Apparently. So, well, this is an old petition. So this petition was started on November 12th, 2014.
That is pretty old at this point.
And the petition is called La Restitución del Pantli o Bandera de Cuitlahuac que se encuentra en el Archivo Secreto Vaticano.
Wow. So someone said, okay, we're trying to get the so-called headdress of Motecuzoma back. We also need to get the
we need to get
back.
this back too while you're at it.
Yeah, we need to pair them together, return them to the Mexika nation so that we can reinstate the emperor of Mexika.
And then there'll be a new guy whose last name is also Iturbide, and he'll be like, hey, by the way, if you're looking for an emperor. And so in English, that the petition says, the petition for the return of the Pantli, or Cuitlahuac flag, from the Vatican's secret archives. And it's like, well, if these archives are secret, how do we know what's... Well, anyway.
How does everyone know about these secret archives?
And so the text associated with the petition says, the flag of Cuitlahuac was used by the important Mexica warrior Cuitlahuac, the night of June 30th, 1520, to defend the city of Tenochtitlan against the invaders. In 1973 to 1975, we learned through Father Ignacio Romero Vargas Iturbide. So now he's father. Okay.
He's been grandfathered into father.
We learned through Father Ignacio Romero Vargas Iturbide, the Pope's personal secretary then, that the flag was kept at the Vatican secret archive. So now I have a date, right? I wonder if I could find out who the Pope's personal secretary was in 1973 to 1975.
But, even if the date's wrong, I mean, how can you trust the dates of anyone who is petitioning on change.org of all places to have a fictitious banner returned?
Yeah, but at least
And who's supposed to receive this banner? Who are they petitioning on behalf of? Is it the Mexican government? Who?
Yeah.
Who's supposed to get this banner back?
Well, it's written to Su Santidad Papa Francisco, Casa Santa Marta, Cita del Vaticano. So...
Okay.
Straight to the Pope, baby.
Straight to the Pope.
It says the symbology of this flag is very important for the Mexica culture. It represents the cosmovision, the philosophy, the harmony with oneself and with life. The life for us is the truth seen and lived by our ancestors, not the one from the history books. We ask the Vatican for the restitution of the original relic to Mexico so it can be recognized and honored as it deserves. So it got 417 signatures, and I don't think the Pope ever responded.
But you know why, right? You know why the Pope never saw it? It's because they didn't tap into Esparza's idea of using reason.
Yeah, there we go.
And telechy, or what was that word? Alchemy, or
I don't even know.
Entelechy. They're not completely fully actualized people. That's why their petition failed. It's a personal failure. That's what it is here.
So what's funny is when I first got that book, Juicio a España, I was showing it to Michelle. So this was like 96, 97, I think. And, I was all in at that point. I was like a gung-ho fucking Mexicayo warrior. Yeah.
Super Mexika right there.
And what's funny is Michelle looked at it. She's like, how come that doesn't look like any of the stuff we see at the museum? And I was like, that's a good question.
Michelle, she's always been very, very astute in piercing through the BS.
Yeah.
This is not the first time.
Yeah.
Because I recall several instances from back then where she made me pause and think, okay, yeah.
So she pointed that out. And
interesting point, Michelle.
Yeah, of course, my cognitive dissonance at the time was like, well, I mean, it's what Romero Vargas said, and it's what all the Mexicano people said. So
I mean, it's like the X-Files. You wanted to believe.
Yeah. I was
because it was part of who
I was
you
Mulder
were at the
to
time.
her Scully.
That's right. That's right.
And I've other people in danza who do not ascribe to this image in particular. My favorite response I've gotten is a mutual friend of ours looked at it and said, "Man, I just think it's fucking ugly."
Hey, to each his own. I mean, beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, right?
But
so
going back to the rays around it, I just think it's so funny that when you look at the temple of Quetzalcoatl at Teotihuacan, it looks exactly like the leaves.
It does.
Or feathers or whatever they're supposed to be that go around Quetzalcoatl's head.
But the difference with the banner is that the leaves aren't necessarily kind of straightforward as those are at the temple. Mm-hmm. These are kind of like wavy. Right?
Yeah.
Like a little bit wavy. And which is why he calls them like leaves, right? So I think he took the word leaf a little too far with his interpretation here for the banner. Like he was probably envisioning like some leaves in the fall, the blowing in the breeze, and it's like, yeah, that's it. That's what I'm going for. And Estrella Numa was like, all right, I got you, man. I got you.
What's funny is so back in the day when I first encountered this flag, I didn't have like a poster of it or a screen printed image of it. I just had what was in what you could see online and what was in the book Juicio a España. So I took it upon myself to draw one. And so I drew one and I colored it and I fucked up one of the rays. Yeah. And it's funny because I still see people using my drawing of it, and I could tell it's mine.
I think I have a print of it.
Yeah, I'm sure you do.
Like a what is it? Like an 8x11?
11 by 17 is how I used to make
17.
them. Yeah. And one of the rays is fucked up, and that's how I can tell when somebody's using my version of it. And they're like, "This is the banner," and I'm like, "Hey, I drew that."
I've come across people too over the years where I've transcribed, for instance, the thing that I transcribed, and this is going back almost 20 years now, was Jack D. Forbes' Mestizo essay in the book Aztecas del Norte.
It's a great essay.
And I transcribed it word for word. And back then, this is before I went to school, and I didn't know like how you were supposed to do endnotes and like how that worked. And so I just copied it verbatim as it was printed, and all the endnotes are at the end. And to this day, I can tell who's using my version of that essay because the endnotes are exactly as the way that I typed them up almost 20 years ago. And they're like, yes, I wrote, or whatever. They make all these claims about, but yeah, it's Forbes' work, but still, it's like, I typed that. It took me hours. Give me some credit here, man.
Right? Damn, bro. At least give credit where credit's due.
Exactly. We keep coming back to that.
The thing about this flag is I keep seeing it pop up on T-shirts. And look, I'm not trying to take anybody's money, right? People want to buy a flag with this image on it, a T-shirt with this. Shit, I have a T-shirt with this image on it, right? But when you look at the people selling merchandise related to this image, it just repeats that same story, like without question. No question at all. This is the real Mexican flag. The real Mexican flag should have the Atlachinoli, and this one was discovered in the Vatican. In fact, once I was at UNM giving a talk about calendar systems and how they were represented in the tonalamat, in the spreadsheet style codices, accordion style, yeah. And I told everybody, hey, there's a cool story, because I was using images from the Tonalamat album as part of my presentation. And I said, if there's time after this talk, remind me and I'll tell you a cool story about the Tonalamat Albin. And so sure enough, my talk ends and somebody in the audience is like, hey, can you tell us that story? So I tell them the story about how, we did an episode on it. So I'm not going to recount the story here, but if you look up the episode, but it's a very cool story. And somebody in the back raises his hand and he's like, well, that sounds very similar to the story of Romero Vargas Iturbide, who went to the Vatican secret archives. And I'm like, holy shit, that story gets around, man.
Yep, it's still being told. Yep. As I said, it's still being told.
And when
I just remembered.
Go for it.
Go ahead. No, finish up.
No, and I was just going to say that, when people who are selling the merchandise with it on it, I don't do it aggressively. I'll just say, hey, that image actually, there's some questions about that image. And they just respond with like, how dare you,
Right. Yeah. You're questioning the ancestors.
Yeah, you're questioning the ancient ancestral teachings from the 1940s.
The memory of our ancestors and okay. All right. So we don't have to get into it here, but it just occurred to me that when we were talking about the image of Quetzalcoatl and the rays, and it reminded me of the conversation that we've had on Discord with some of the supporters that are on Discord about how there's rumors, and perhaps this could be its own episode. I don't know if you've done a dispatch on it, but there's talk of perhaps it not being a serpent head, but actually something else. You want to say something about that real briefly?
Yeah, so and what's interesting is Iturbide alludes to that, right?
He does. That's what made me think of it too. It's like I was just thinking about
and
that.
I saw a video recently that alludes to it too, and I'll tell you about it in a second. So the thought is that the Quetzalcoatl, the image of Quetzalcoatl that we all just know as like the feathered serpent, right, for lack of a better translation, is a serpent. But there is a school of thought amongst mainstream archaeologists and historians, the Mesoamericanists, that it actually represents a more of like a magical creature, like a mythic creature that's a combination of different animals. And that if you look at it, and I do want to investigate it further because I've seen images that they're showing me as proof. And I'm like, oh, wow, I think they're onto something. Because if you look at depictions of wolves, some of them look very much like the profiles of the images of Quetzalcoatl. So it's like it looks like a snake wolf hybrid, right? And so there are some people investigating that currently. And I thought that was interesting because when I was in Belize, there was a group of people working on preserving jaguars. Mm-hmm. And they did this video presentation that we saw. I didn't see it in person, but I saw the video of the presentation. And they're talking about how jaguars are a big part of the cultural, heritage of the area. And the Maya people have always looked to the jaguars. And they're showing temples with images on it, heads that look like, there it would be Kukulkan, not Quetzalcoatl, but they look like Kukulkan heads, but they have like jaguarish attributes. And
the word jaguar.
This jaguar preservation group of Maya were like, it's always been part of our culture, the images of the jaguars. I was like, huh. And then we have what, Iturbide wrote, where he talks about, and I'll pull it up. Yeah, right here. As in Teotihuacan, on the staircase of Quetzalcoatl, where we can contemplate the same solar symbol with its leaves of light, in which is the head of an animal that looks like an ocelot from the front and a snake in profile. So that's interesting. I wonder how long that idea's been around.
So Iturbide had a few, or Romero Vargas, I should say, instead of Iturbide, had a few moments of where he was catching on to some stuff, but he just couldn't. He was so trapped in his in his Mexicayo, Mexicanista mindset that he couldn't get around it. So, but I mean, it's interesting because this also is very reminiscent. I don't know if you've seen this. There's a documentary from the 80s of this flying dog animal that's kind of elongated like a snake.
I've seen that documentary.
By the name of, is it Falcor?
Falcor, yeah.
Falcor, yeah. So there's precedent. Now, people have been talking about this for a while.
Oh, man, that movie... I think everybody our age was like traumatized by a particular scene from that movie where the horse in the quicksand.
The horse. Yeah.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. I know, man.
Atreyu.
Oh, the 80s.
Yeah.
Never-ending story.
It's a never-ending story, man.
And it's a never-ending story with these Mexicanistas, Mexicayotes. I'm telling you.
Nice callback. Well, you know why? It's because they don't like the truth, my friend.
What is it about that truth that they don't like so much?
Well, the truth, it's like medicine. It doesn't always taste good, but it is always good for you. Timoitase.
Never-ending story. Na, 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 na.
God damn it.
Mira ya lo que hay aquí. Puedo ver los sueños que hay en ti. Imagina que estaré siempre junto a ti. Nuestra lucha puedo ver y la respuesta.
Thank you for listening to Tales from Aztlantes, a project of the Chimali Institute of Mesoamerican Arts. If you enjoy the show, please consider becoming a Patreon supporter. You can do this by visiting talesfromaztlantes.com and clicking Support the Podcast. Your continued support will help keep the podcast ad-free and independent. Until next time, Timoitase.